Welcome all to a new Looma video. My name is now Looma. If you haven't seen my post, here it is, if you want to pause and read the video. But yeah, I changed my name just because there were Stratuses out there making music and Stratuses out there making YouTube videos, and I wanted to make myself a little bit more unique. Right now is better than ever to change my name while my channel is still young. Thank you all for supporting me. I really appreciate it. My community has been so great so far, and we're just about to hit 1,000 subscribers, so I want to say thank you very much. Anyways, let's talk about what I'm going to do for this video, and that's going to be Stranger Things, sound design, listen. So I'm really excited to be doing this because Stranger Things is one of my favorite TV shows, and it's one of the things that got me into making music in the first place. It's part of my origin, so I'm happy to be making this video today. If you want to see more Looma content, make sure to subscribe and hit that like button, and let's get into the video. Let's start off with the bass lines. Bass lines are probably one of the most crucial things to a retrowave track or a Stranger Things track because the bass lines are just incredible. When you're making a bass line, first thing we want to do is just sequence it. So usually what it is like half notes like this, and we want to make it kind of like an arpeggio. So let's just try something out like so something like this is already pretty good. So we can just loop that and then pitch it down a little bit. And that sounds pretty good. What we can also do is change this to monophonic, because a lot of the synths used in old music are monophonic. So we're not going to be able to hear two notes at one time. And that kind of just limits you into always using one note at a time. But it's really cool when you start to mix in portamento or glide. You can really start to hear that Stranger Things-ness. That's not all. What we can also do is change an envelope here and then put it on the cutoff position. Make sure it's polar like this, and then change the resonance. And then you start to hear it. You can also mess with the unison, and you already have something that's pretty convincing. You can even pitch it down. A lot of things that old synthesizers do is have multiple oscillators, kind of like Serum here. And what they do is change one of the oscillators up 7 semitones, and that's just going to make it into a 7th. So you can mess around with that and get something pretty convincing. You can also change the oscillator shape. I'd recommend keeping it in the basic shapes category, because a lot of the old synthesizers and stuff didn't have crazy wavetables like we do in Serum. They use analog oscillators. These oscillators weren't very capable of making crazy wavetables like we have in Serum, so basic shapes is kind of all you need for this. So triangle, sawtooth wave, square, etc., sine wave. So I like the sound of this this triangle wave here. I think that's kind of what we need to do to start off with our bass line here. One thing that you might want to do to spice it up is add a chorus here with a high pass filter just by clicking this button here. And then you can change the mix, maybe turn the depth down, keep the rate kind of low. But you can start to mix this in and kind of hear that chorus, which is a really cool sound. Also, what you can do is do something with the distortion by going to downsampling. So a lot of these analog gears and recording methods weren't capable of producing, 44 point whatever K samples like our modern recording software. So what we can do is downsample, and that will basically just hard limit anything after whatever you set it at. So if I set this drive really high, it's going to crush it to a point of non-recognition. But if I change this just a little bit, you can hear it start to lose a little bit of quality. And furthermore, we can cut off some of the highs here, like that, to get rid of some of the distortion that is the downsampling is causing. Another thing you can do is add noise. Since these oscillators were analog and whatnot, you get some noise coming through whenever you use analog gear, which you don't get through digital gear. So just adding in some noise with a little bit of direct out can also help seal the deal. Now that we have the bass line out of the way, let's move on to some plucks. Again, sticking to basic shapes here, we just want to make sure that we're not using anything too crazy. This will do just fine. And then for our LFO, we want to just change it to an envelope and maybe do something like this, where we have it do a little bit of a pluck. Maybe change this to 1 bar or so. And one thing that you'll notice in a lot of the Stranger Things tracks is just the detune. So it's not a unison detune or using this detune necessarily, but it is taking maybe a low frequency oscillator like this one and changing the BPM into hertz rather than beat. So it kind of just like oscillates randomly. So you get a little bit of that creepiness to it. You can pitch it up and then add quite a bit of reverb. There's a lot of reverb that happens with these higher pitched ones. And then also what you can do is edit this attack here, so we're not getting any of those poppy sounds. And then what you can do is kind of layer it here. So you might want to do it in a different type of pattern. So just like doing something like this, maybe doing it very similar to the bass line, just with different notes, you can start to create something like that. I'd recommend having like one note that kind of hits, that stands out from the other, so maybe even moving this an octave down. Again, what you can do is add more bit crush or distortion, downsampling. What you can alternatively do is add this to a track and then use a free plugin called Origin, which I really like, which is a downsampling plugin that doesn't cause those weird artifacts. And in fact, what you can do instead of using this oscillator to create the detune, you can add the detune in to it through this thing, which is called wow/flutter. And this is basically an analog tape distortion movement chorus thing that will really work wonders on your elements if you're trying to go for that more retro feel. You can add a lot of movement there. I wouldn't overdo it with these effects because the cassette can get kind of annoying if it's like just too prevalent. It's one of those like felt not heard things. You don't want your track to be like, cassette noise in my ears all the time. You want it to be more like, I can hear like the distant artifacts of something that sounds like a cassette, and that gives it kind of like a vibe. The one thing I'm going to do here is add another bass line, which is something that is like kind of uncommon in like music nowadays, but it's not like relatively uncommon with 80s type tracks. So what you can do is kind of cut out some of these low mids, and you'll still be able to hear the bass pretty well. So now you can hear both of the elements playing there, and they're both very clear regardless of this being a bass, just because with these like oscillators there's a lot of higher harmonics in them. And what we can do is add another bass like this, where we do somewhat of the same thing, but we may want to just target some of the lows here. And I would put this at like something like 2 bars and do something like this, and put it on an envelope and then distort it, and then like add movement to the cutoff here, and we can change the amount of distortion as well, and then maybe compress it with a multi-band compressor. Right now what we have is just a repeating like 4 bar thing here, right? We have this, and that's just repeating, that's just repeating. What we want is a bass line that changes. So we can do something like this, where we have like you can kind of hear where this is going. Also, something that's kind of cool is if you change this random phase here, you can get it to like kind of phase out and sound kind of cool. And what you can do is also like take the fundamental out of this one and then have a separate oscillator dedicated to just the fundamental, so there's no phasing going on. So by just adding some more kind of like EQ and whatnot to it, you can get that deeper sub-bassy sound. Let's move on to drums. Thankfully, I have a Synthwave sample pack here called Free Synthwave Drums. I don't know exactly where I got this. I'll look for the link, and if I find it, it'll be in the description. If not, I'll link you to another synthwave pack. What you basically want is just like an 80s sounding drum kit. So like any of these kicks will do really good. I personally like this one quite a bit. And then for snares, what you want is these overly powerful and overly energetic, but they're also kind of like low passed and downsampled. So I like this one a lot. Usually for like synthwave and stuff like that, you just want to have kind of a lazy drum pattern. You don't want to overdo anything. Just do kind of the bare minimum when it comes to it, which is just like going like that, and then adding your snare on the 2s and the 4s as always. And then you can also just repeat this. And there you go. Most 4 on the floor you can get. I don't like the tempo of this. I think I'm going to drop it down to more like 100. Kind of that more mid-tempo-y range that seems to work best for this type of synthwave, retro wave, analog wave, I don't know, Demogorgon wave, you know what I mean. Also, what you want to do is add some type of hat after the first 4 bars that just goes on 8th notes, just the tss, 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 tss. This will suffice. You can just repeat this once again, being lazy with our drums, but it's part of the genre, so don't judge. So then after those 4 bars, we just go into this. That's kind of the fundamental of the drums. Also, like toms that you hear a lot, like the do-do-do. And that can be found also in the Synthwave pack, but I'll show you how to make something like that without using a sample pack or without using like a pre-made like fill. Go into any sample pack that has toms in it, and you want to find the tonal ones. That one's good. That one's good. And then we can just like organize them in a way that makes you think like, damn, that's an 80s fill. And you can also make them unique and pitch them around a little bit. So there we go. I think that sounds pretty good. And then what we can do is consolidate this. So we just highlight it, and then we go to here, and then we go to consolidate tracks from time selection, start, and then we can get rid of our old samples here because we have our consolidated one. We can put it on a track to do some further editing to it. So I don't like the width here, and I also don't like how dynamic it is, so I'm just going to clip it. And then also take out some of those lower subby notes, and then also cut out some of the highs. You know what? I want to try something. I want to take a Maximus here, compress it after the limiter, and make it mono, and then add some reverb. I think that sounds good. Let's talk a little bit more about like elements like lead. So I'm gonna make a new lead. And this one can be used like kind of sparingly, and it can just be used kind of like a little pluck maybe throughout the song. And I'm just going to use a classic sine wave here like this and put it on envelope. And then I'm going to distort it quite a bit and then pitch it up. And then add just a bunch of reverb, just all of it. Like that. And then we can put some ping pong delay on it. Can also put something like that on it, and then we can also take out some of the high end. We can also add like a phaser to get something that sounds maybe something like that, and then we can just add this note into like the start. Can also mess around with these notes, see what happens if we mix up the order. So we have a cute little loop here now. Something you can also add to this lead, if you like kind of the more like panning left to right, is a pan-o-matic in Ableton. I think auto pan is the name of it. Anyways, what you can do is change this to pan, and then you can see how the little thing changes here. So you can change the speed of it, and let's just see what this sounds like. I like the sound of that. I like the panning, so I think I'm going to keep it. Going back to more baseline things, I'll show you kind of another technique that might be used. So instead of just like getting rid of the baseline, I think what I'm going to do is just make sure we're only hearing this one. And then so we have our baseline here, and instead of having it on envelope, we can put it on trigger and put it to like eighth notes. We can also automate a lot of these things. Anything that you do with these envelopes will sound pretty cool. What you can also do, add some type of arpeggio where it goes in third notes. You can have this repeat as well. Add arpeggios and stuff like that. Usually keep things pretty sequenced, so you know they're hitting on 16th notes, third notes, fourth notes, half notes, quarter notes, etc. Everything is like very structured, kind of like in your mastering and mixing. I've seen some people, what they do is put like a compressor on there and just compress it all the way, and then add some like downsampling or something here in front of the compressor. And it doesn't sound half bad, although sometimes you prefer the dynamic, so you can just take the compressor off. Synthwave and retrowave type stuff is a really fun genre to make. If you want to see a tutorial on how to make songs like Virtual Self, make sure you drop a comment because I'd like to make one. Let me know if there's any other types of videos ideas that you would like to see me make in the future, because I will make sure to do those. And yeah, drop a comment, say hi, join my Discord, whatever you want to do, and I'll see you.